Hey folks, Dr. Mike Israetel, Renaissance Periodization, back in our series of powerlifting program design. Here we go. Last time we designed a strength program. This time we're going to figure out how to run it. Quick reminder, highly recommended for you guys to view the whole rest of the series in the videos that have been released so far, specifically how to build a hypertrophy program for powerlifting and how to run that hypertrophy program, and of course, the last video of how to build a strength program. If you get that context, a lot of this is going to make a ton more sense. You get more out of it. You'll get better at programming for yourself, which is kind of the whole point of watching these videos. Anyway, unless you watch these videos for the soothing sound of my voice, unlikely, and my incredible ability to match my facial expressions to what I'm saying. Again, unimpressive. So let's get to the facts, because that's why you're here. So, first, quick review of the program we built last time in the strength design video. Then we're going to talk about how to set mesocycle length. We're going to talk about how to progress relative effort, volume, and then of course, how to deload. Quite simple, a little bit different than for hypertrophy, so it's worth noting. Then of course, starting the next strength meso, and then we'll preview the next video, which if you know your powerlifting periodization might have something to do with peaking. Let's get started. So, here's the sample program we built last time. Again, first, after I'm done with this little mini rant about this program, feel free to pause your video, zoom in on the program and take a look at its architecture. It's just a sample. This isn't the way to design strength programs for powerlifting. It's just a way to do it. And if you're really curious about how the hell we built this, check out the last video, previous one in this series, and you'll figure that out because we go through it all the way through. So here's the program we built. Now, we have to figure out how to progress, but first we have to figure out how long to progress for, right? We need to know the meso length because we need to figure out how fast to progress. If your mesocycle is very long, let's say 8 consecutive weeks of harder and harder training, the harder inclination of how much harder than last time, I know you're going to post about this, how much harder than last time is just a little bit harder because like you got to dope that shit out for 8 weeks. You can't just like blow it all out in 2 weeks and be like, oh, like I guess I'm training to failure the rest of this time. On the other hand, if you have a maybe 3-week accumulation phase of 3 weeks of harder and harder and then a deload, well, then you can't just really sort of willy-nilly make things a little bit harder each time because you get to your 3rd week and you're like, oh, guess it's time to deload next, but we're not even pushing it that hard. Why the hell am I deloading, right? So you have to know the meso length. Or you should know it. The more you know it, the better you can actually plan your progressions, right? So how do you determine meso length? Well, there's a couple of basic ways. First, if you have a meet, a competition in powerlifting, or you just have a time in a couple of months or something where you want to shoot for PRs, even if you're just in the gym, knowing that can help you plan the mesocycles really, really specifically. Let's say it's 5 weeks. We're not going to do 2 mesocycles of strength in 5 weeks. That's ridiculous. You would deload at week 2.5 or something. So then you know you have like probably 4 weeks up, 1 week down, right? If it's 10 weeks, you're probably not going to do a 10-week ascending mesocycle, 10 weeks of or 9 weeks of accumulation is a bit much, way too much cumulative fatigue at the end. So maybe you'll do like 4 up, 1 down, 4 up, 1 down, and then you're ready. So knowing that context is really important. You don't just want to start training and go like, well, I guess I'm ready to peak now. You want to kind of know when things are happening so you can make logical progressions and logical decisions about mesocycle length. Generally speaking, powerlifting strength mesocycles can be or should be between 4 and 6 weeks long. And that's total, including the deload. So that means you can have 3 weeks up and 1 down, 3 weeks accumulation, 1 deload. You can also have up to 5 weeks accumulation, 1 deload. If you're a beginner, you can go longer than this in strength mesos for sure. This lecture series is a little bit more directed at the intermediate and above. If you're really training for hardcore strength to be as good of a powerlifter as you can be, it's unlikely that you don't need to deload much longer than 6 weeks at a time. If you can make it, great. There's almost never a disadvantage from cutting it a little bit short, having a little bit more breathing room, and just doing better next time, okay? So 4 to 6 is probably what we're looking at. There are exceptions to that general rule, but if you're really questioning how many mesocycles can I stuff into the space of 8 weeks or 6 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks until my peaking phase starts, then the answer is, well, these are roughly 4 to 6 week long, so Jenga block them in as you see fit. And within that range, between 4 and 6, roughly, you can choose via, first of all, meet scheduling. Like if you have 5 total weeks, like, hey, you're not doing 2 of these things, right? If you have 10 weeks, then maybe you're doing 2 of them. If you have 15 weeks, then you can for sure do 3, so on and so forth. Next one is your training age and recovery ability. Some of the best powerlifters in the world do a 3-to-1 paradigm, 3 up, 1 week down, because they can't physically survive anymore because they take such a huge beating from squatting and deadlifting 800 pounds, benching 500. You just don't do that for 6 weeks straight. It's almost impossible. You have to deload more frequently. On the other hand, if you're more of an intermediate, more of a beginner-ish kind of lifter, or you just have really excellent recovery, then there's no reason. If you can go hardcore for 5 weeks straight before a deload, why the hell wouldn't you? It's awesome momentum. Absolutely do that. But just don't lie to yourself. If you consistently fall apart at week 4, stop planning 5-week accumulations. It's a bad idea. And of course, if nothing else, trial and error. So some of you may be coming to this video not having done a lot of this formal kind of training design before, and you're like, what the hell is an accumulation phase anyway? I don't know how long mine is. Just start training. And, obviously, if you're sort of that beginner, your meet's probably not for a while. You have plenty of time. For strength meso, just keep going until you're not hitting PRs anymore and you're super beat up. Take a deload and look at how long that was. You say, okay, that was 7 weeks of accumulation and 1 week deload. Honestly, by week number 6, I was really messed up and I should have just stopped there. So next time I'm going to do 5 up, 1 down, and then boom, you have your trial and error just once has given you really great data on what to do from then on, and you can always modify it later. So now after this, we have a mesocycle length based on all these. Now we can use that to progress on relative effort. And here the situation is really quite simple. Most mesocycles in strength training for powerlifting, you start at roughly RPE 7 and you end at roughly RPE 10. And then however many weeks is between them, you interpolate RPE targets week to week to week. So week 1 could be RPE 7, week 2 RPE 8, then week 3 RPE 9, and week 4 RPE 10. It's a 4-week, 4 up, 1 down. Really great standard cycle. Does it have to be that? No. But whatever way, if it's longer or shorter, basically you should be starting at 7, ending at 10, which means you might repeat some RPs. You may do fractional RPs if you're not that sort of thing. Today's a 7.5. Is that really possible to tell? Maybe, maybe not. But in any case, you can repeat like 7.7, 8.8, 9.9, etc. You can do that, whatever it takes. And it doesn't have to be exactly linear. It can do this, but you got to start at 7-ish RP, and you probably should end at around 10-ish RP, right? It's really that straightforward. Now, how do you know how much sort of load to put on the bar? Well, generally speaking, in hypertrophy training, we can add reps or load. In strength training, it's absolutely critical for you to add load because that's what you're going to be tested on. It's strength increase that we want. I mean, if you're adding reps, you're getting better strength endurance. But at the end of the day, if your sets of 5 turn into sets of 8, yeah, you'll get stronger, but you'll get much stronger. And actually what strength means is lifting more weight by lifting more weight. So still sets of 5, but more and more weight. So you can add enough weight to each successive workout to roughly target that RPE that you want to hit. So for example, you squatted 250 pounds for sets of 5 in week 1 at RPE 7. Next week, you got to do RPE 8. It's an educated guess on your part as to how much weight to do for that. Maybe it's 260 pounds. You do a first set and you're like, nah, that was like RPE 6. So instead of 260, next set, you put 270 on the bar. You hit it and you're like, ooh, that was perfect. That was RPE 8. That's exactly what I needed. Third set, let's say you have 4 sets total that day of squats. Fourth set, 270 again, beautiful RPE 8. And then the last set, you're like feeling pretty tired. You're like, man, that last set, I sure as hell am not, that's going to be an RPE 9 or some shit. If I really hit it, for 5 at 270, maybe I'll go back to 265 or 260. You hit 260 again, it's again an RPE 8, perfect, taking into account. You're done, you're all set, and you're out. So that's how you essentially do that process. If you mess up on a given set, adjust the next set, no problem. So that every workout to workout to workout is a little bit of a guessing game, educated one. And every set to set to set is a little bit of a guessing game for altering loads. No big deal because you're just trying to do your best, right? And the kicker here is because the RPEs are ascending and because you're trying to get stronger, never let the average load for a session go down. Sure, you can do 270 some of the sets and 260 for some of the other ones, just getting tired, no big deal. But if you did 270 and 260 for some of these sets in week 1, you had better be doing some shit like 265, 275 for those same sets in week 2 and so on and so forth. If you cannot progress in load at all week to week, like it's the same, week 4 and week 5 are the same, or week 4 you hit really big PRs and week 5 you actually couldn't do as much, sets and rep equated, then you hit your maximum recoverable volume and you need to deload like ASAP because getting weaker is absolutely not part of the sport. So relatively simple, straightforward stuff there. What about volume progression? Generally speaking, volume is king for hypertrophy, but strength, the king there is load. It's not a controversial statement. And progression in load is absolutely critical. It's adding 5 pounds, 10 pounds here and there to the bar. That's what makes a huge difference. That's what builds all of your strength. So volume progression is a factor, but it's very, very secondary. How do we figure out the right volume progression or just the right average amount of volume to use? Well, generally speaking, you start at your minimum effective volume and you know, enough to get you a good workout. Let's say you know anything about your volume landmarks. You run a normal standard cycle, exactly the meso that you were going to run, 5 weeks up, 1 down. And at week 5, you hit RP 10, right? Easy to do because RP 10 is easy to hit. You just keep going until you can't go anymore and you have to rack the bar because you won't get any more reps. At that point, you have to do one of 2 things. One is if you feel like you can do more next week, more weight at RP 10 again, and still hit a PR, you can try another week if you have that flexibility into your mesocycle length. If you have a meet coming up, you probably don't. You can try another week, and if you succeed, that means in that last week that you thought was going to be the end, you weren't actually at your maximum recoverable volume. Ideally, every strength mesocycle hits RP 10 in the last week and maximum recoverable volume at the same time. That means you did all of the load you could have and all of the volume to stimulate as much adaptation from that load as you could. Because if you could have done more volume while still hitting these big ass PRs, why the fuck didn't you? Right? You're literally just leaving gains on the tank for no good goddamn reason. So option 1 is just to keep going and see if you can. Option 2 for more high level intermediates and more advanced folks is better. It's just an educated guess to inform your volume for next time. So you get to week 5 and you got to deload in week 6. And if you have a meet coming up soon, you got to deload in week 6 anyway, no matter how week 5 went. You hit RP 10 and everything. Just ask yourself a super honest question. Can I continue to hit PRs with this much volume at RP 10 another week? If the answer is yes, shut it down, deload like normal, but next time you do a strength meso, know that the average amount of volume you did over the course of this one needs to be higher. You can lift it in a progressive manner where you start out with the same minimum effective volume, but over the course of the next meso, you add 1 or 2 sets here and there so that the average volume goes up because the end volume is higher. Totally fine. Or if you'd like, a simpler method is just to raise the volume from the beginning and just raise it on average. So the volume can be the same, set numbers can be the same week to week to week, but like they usually, 3 and 4 sets of stuff. Now it's like 4 and 5 sets of stuff. So you just needed more volume because it clearly wasn't enough because you could keep going further. However, a lot of times the answer won't be, I could have kept going further. It'll be like, ooh, I'm not sure. Or often it'll be like, dude, what? Like someone's like, okay, you just hit 405 for a set of 6, huge PR, and then you did set 5, 4, and 3, back off or whatever. You're just toast. You're lying on the ground convulsing, and someone's like, sweet workout. You're like, thanks, bro. You're like, next week, 410, same workout, just 5 more pounds. You're like, are you fucking crazy? I can't do this shit again for 2 weeks. I need a deload right now. If they made liquid deload, I would shoot that shit into my veins like a heroin addict in front of everyone at the gym. That's a poor look for people, A future boss might be there. You don't want to do that sort of thing. So if that's you, and if there's no fucking way you can do another week, then the volume was perfectly sufficient and you don't have to raise it within the foreseeable future. If you're not sure, err on the side of not raising your volume next time. Volume chasing is pretty good for hypertrophy. It's not good for strength. Next time, just add a little bit more load to the bar than you otherwise would, and you're good to go. So that's the way it works. Now, the more advanced you become, the less volume is going to rise through the mesocycle, and the more you're just going to have a stable volume and all of the travel from minimum effective volume to maximum recoverable, because now minimum effective volume is higher, maximum recoverable is lower, that space is going to be so tiny that you can make it up just with load additions. Because technically speaking, if you go from 385 to 405 over the course of a meso on your squat, that's a volume increase. Like in the mathematical sense of sets times reps times weight, that's more of that stuff. And sometimes your MEV and MRV, and also remember fatigue rises, bringing your MRV down to you at the end of a meso. If it starts just above and your MEV is already high, it can really just be the same thing the entire time. So if you're advanced, You don't have to think that in a strength progression, I have to progress in volume. You don't. You don't have to progress in volume at all. You only should be progressing in volume if you consistently get to the end of your mesos, hit RP 10, and your first thought is, I hit a PR. And your second thought is like, I could probably do more than that shit if I just had like a week of recovery and I just did it next week. If that's your answer, you need to do more stuff. Some people would say, well, why not just add more weight to the bar? Well, it was RP 10. You can't possibly add more weight. But if you're not tired, you can add more volume. Just as a thought experiment, if you really push this, imagine doing a workout with just all singles. One set of the squat, and then you go. That's your workout. At the end of a 4-week progression, when you hit a big PR at RP 10, could you do just a little more than that a week later? Probably. I mean, for the love of God, it was one fucking rep. If you can't recover from one rep and after a week or half a week of easier training or other muscle groups, what the hell are you doing? So that is way underdosing the volume. Any volume higher than that would be better, of course, but there's definitely a distinct limit. Don't push the volume. But if it's too easy, it's too little volume, if you feel like you can keep progressing, raise the volume in the next meso. That's the best approach. All right. That's it, really. Now we're up to the deload. All we do is we raise the loads a little bit, we adjust the volume as needed, and voila, we finished with hopefully a bunch of big PRs under our belt. We're the strongest we've ever been. How to deload? Well, it's a little bit different than hypertrophy. First, it's the split. This is just an option for deloading, and it works really well theoretically. You split the week into 2 halves, first half, second half. First half, you take all of your loads that you did in week 1 of the program, not in the last week. So if you started at 385 in the squat, worked up to 405, you take 80% of 385, your week 1 load, and you do that for all the sets that you normally would have, right, in week 1. And let's say it was 3, you do 3 sets, but instead of like 6 and 6 and 6 reps, the devil's number, if you did that in week 1, take your week 1 reps and cut them in half. So you're doing 80% of 385, whatever that is. Let's pretend it's like 340 or some shit like that. You do like roughly 340, and you do that for, in that case, 3 sets of 3. If the original was 3 sets of 6 at 385 or something like that. My math is definitely off because it's not 340. But in any case, we can pretend. 80% of that. Some of you will say, oh my God, that's really fucking easy. No shit, it's a deload. It's not supposed to be that hard. Some of you will say, damn, that's still pretty intense. It is, because it's designed to conserve your adaptations. But the intensity will come down a ton when you get the second half of the week. So this applies to all of your lifts in the first half. When you get to the second half of the week, you're going to take all of your week 1. Again, we go all the way, zoom back to week 1, take all the same sets, reps, and load, take the load and reduce it by 40% or to 40%, so by 60%. So if you were lifting 100 pounds, now you lift 40 pounds. I mean, it's ridiculously easy, which is good because this is the hyper recovery phase of the deload. We're really not supposed to be stressing anything. And of course, the reps are down by half. So if you're doing sets of 6, you do sets of 3. And what you can do in addition to that is just consolidate the 2 or 3 workouts you have in that last half of the week into one big workout. Because this is so easy, each workout by itself is going to take you like 15 or 20 minutes. What you can do is if you normally train like Thursday, Friday, and you take Saturday and Sunday off, what you can do is just completely just not show up to the gym Thursday, take the Thursday, Friday session, combine it into one 40-minute session, do it Friday, and then get a ton of time off. Super great for healing, super economical on time as well. Here's the deal. Whatever you end up doing, make sure it hits at least 2 points. 1, it's still letting you practice the lifts. One of the main reasons why in powerlifting a deload is notably better than taking a whole week off is because a deload lets you physically practice, technically practice the lifts, keeps you crisp and sharp, even might make you a little bit crisper and sharper because it's lower loads. You can really practice technique, which makes your next week of training after that training way better. Because if you take a whole week off of training, come back kind of a little bit of an awkward situation. And the other big thing is that deload has to, at the end of it, make you feel more recovered and not less. Okay, if you're your next program starts Monday and it's Saturday of the deload week and people are like, dude, how you feeling? You're like, dude, deload fucked me up. You're doing deload wrong. What you should be saying Saturday is like, man, I can't wait to train. And Sunday, you're just practicing karate moves in your garage because you can't, you know what I'm saying, you're too dangerous for the public because you got all that crazy psycho energy built up. And then Monday, you just attack the weights like nuts, which is perfect. Super low level of fatigue. Time for another progressive, very productive mesocycle. Now, you may be in a position after one strength meso where you have 2 to start your next meso. If you have another strength meso, how do you do it? Well, you can keep the same exercises to keep the momentum rolling, or if you do change the exercises, make sure they're more specific to powerlifting. So for example, if you had a real productive strength mesocycle of high bar squats, either keep high bar squats in or change to something like low bar squats, which are more specific to powerlifting and how you're actually going to compete. Don't do like high bar squat strength meso and then a front squat strength meso, because that doesn't make any goddamn sense. It's literally the reverse. So that's the exercise guideline. Reduce volumes back to minimum effective volume, whatever gets you that basic essential need. And then you're going to reduce your loads to your best guess of an RP7. And look, if you're wrong in the first set, you can adjust on the second, so on and so forth, and then begin to move up and load again. That's it. It's that simple. Folks, we'll assume you've done 1, 2, or 3 strength mesos. Now, in the next video, once you've done them, you're super strong. It's time to learn how to show off that strength with a proper peaking mesocycle. Next time we see you guys, we'll do powerlifting peaking program design. See you next week.